For years, he was the king of the streets, the undisputed leader of the 405, the man who made the rules, broke the records, and lived his life a quarter mile at a time. He was Justin Shearer. But to the world, he was simply Big Chief. Every empire falls, every king's reign must come to an end. For Justin Shearer, that end came not on a desolate stretch of asphalt under the moonlight, but in the cold, sterile silence of a courtroom. The end of the road, a king in chains. The roar of his engine was gone, replaced by the quiet hum of fluorescent lights and the heavy weight of justice. The final chapter of his story is not written in smoke and burnt rubber. It is written in black and white, in public records that tell a story far darker than any race he ever ran. According to official documents from the Kentucky Department of Corrections, a man named Justin Shearer, born in the same state as our racing hero, faced his final judgment. The charges were not for speeding. They were for a life that had spun completely out of control. The official record is chilling. Charge 1. Receiving stolen property, for an amount between $500 and $10,000. Charge 2. Possession of a controlled substance, first degree. The substance listed is methamphetamine. Charge 3. Theft by unlawful taking, again for an amount between $500 and $10,000. And the final nail in the coffin, Charge 4. Possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. This was not a slap on the wrist. This was the end of the road. Records show Justin Shearer was sentenced to years behind bars. His institution start date is listed as February 14, 2022, with a maximum sentence expiration date stretching all the way to 2032. For a man who lived for the next 10 seconds, the next decade is an eternity. This is goodbye forever. How did it come to this? How did the face of street racing, a hero to millions, fall so far, so fast? The answer is not simple. It is a story of fame, pressure, and a darkness that was always lurking just beneath the surface. To understand the end of his story, we have to go back to the very beginning. The making of an outlaw. Long before the flashing lights were from police cars, they were the headlights of another racer on a dark road. Justin Shearer was born in the rolling hills of Louisville, Kentucky in 1980. In 1992, his family moved to Oklahoma, a place where the streets were long, straight, and perfect for one thing: racing. The obsession started early. At just 9 years old, while other kids were playing with toys, Justin was riding his bike to the legendary Old Route 66. He would hide in the shadows and watch the real street races, mesmerized by the power, the danger, and the glory. The smell of gasoline and burning tires got into his blood. It was a calling. Every legend has an origin story, and for Big Chief, it started with his first car, a 1972 Pontiac Le Mans. It was not much to look at, but to him, it was everything. He poured his heart, his soul, and every dollar he had into that car. He learned how to build it, how to tune it, and how to make it fast. That car would become a legend in its own right. He named it the Crow, and with it, he was going to take over the world. And he did. In the underground racing scene of Oklahoma City, Justin Shearer started making a name for himself. He was smart, he was fearless, and he was fast. Soon, he became the go-to guy, the man who organized the races and kept the peace. He created the list, a ranking of the 10 fastest street-raced cars in the 405. To get on the list, you had to go through him. His authority and commanding presence on the street earned him a nickname that would stick forever: Big Chief. It was during this time that he forged a bond with another young racer who would become his right-hand man, Sean Ellington. Sean, known as Murder Nova, shared Chief's passion and skill. Born in California, Sean moved to Oklahoma as a kid and grew up in his father's auto body shop, learning the trade from the ground up. When he moved to Oklahoma City in 2005, he bought a 1969 Nova that would become the legendary Murder Nova, a flat black beast that was one of the only cars that could truly challenge the Crow. Together, Chief and Sean were an unstoppable force. They were the heart of the 405. When the Discovery Channel decided to make a show about this secret world in 2013, Big Chief was the natural star. He was not just a racer, he was the heart of the show. He was the race master, the mediator, and the king. With their lives now revolving around racing and filming, Chief and Sean needed a home base. Their passion had become a full-time job, so they opened a shop out of necessity. It was called Midwest Street Cars, and it became the headquarters for the 405 crew. He was living the dream. He had fame, he had the fastest car on the street, and he was the undisputed leader. But even then, in the early days, there were signs of a different path. In an old online profile, when asked about his family, he made a chilling joke. He wrote, "Mostly in prison, LOL." He added a laugh out loud, but looking back now, with the knowledge of where his story ends, it feels less like a joke and more like a prophecy. On the show, Big Chief ruled the list with an iron fist, but he was surrounded by a crew of the fastest, toughest, and most colorful characters in the country. His best friend, Murder Nova, was always near the top, their friendly rivalry pushing both of them to be faster. But there were other titans in the 405, and every race night was a war. One of his biggest rivals was a man who called himself Daddy Dave Comstock. Daddy Dave was a racing veteran who started on the streets of Oklahoma City as a teenager. For years, he was known as the King of the Streets with his unstoppable 1996 GMC Sonoma pickup. Later, he built a 1963 Chevy Nova he called Goliath, a car that would give the Crow a run for its money every single time they lined up. The rivalry between Big Chief and Daddy Dave was legendary. For what felt like 20 years, they battled for the #1 spot on the list. One week, Chief would be on top. The next, Dave would dethrone him in a race so close you could not see daylight between the cars. They were friends, but on race night, they were bitter enemies, each willing to do whatever it took to win. Another key figure in the 405 was Chuck Seitzinger. Chuck was a true racing veteran who had been competing since he was old enough to drive. He had raced everything from dirt track motorcycles to professional import drag cars, even winning a national championship in 2004. On the streets, he drove a 1989 Ford Fox body Mustang called the Death Trap, a small tire car that consistently punched above its weight, taking down big tire monsters and earning Chuck a reputation as a giant killer. The 405 crew was a brotherhood, but it was a brotherhood forged in competition. Guys like Doc, Monza, Dominator, and Boosted GT were all friends. But they were also sharks circling the same waters, each one wanting to be #1. Fights would break out, tempers would flare, and accusations of cheating were common. But at the end of the night, they were the 405, and they had each other's backs. That is, until outsiders came to challenge their claim as the fastest in the country. One of the biggest challenges came from a Mississippi racer named Kai Kelly. When Big Chief put out the call to find the fastest racers in the South, everyone told him the man to beat was Kai Kelly. Kai drove a tube chassis Camaro called the Shocker, and he was rumored to have the quickest street car in the nation. Their first meeting was at a Cash Days race in Texas in early 2015. Kai took down Daddy Dave, Doc, and even Big Chief himself to walk away with $16,000. Chief and the 405 were determined to get their money back. They called Kai out for a rematch in New Orleans, but once again, Kai came out on top. Finally, Chief invited him to Oklahoma to race on their home turf. It did not matter. Kai beat Chief by almost 3 car lengths, taking another $6,000 from him. In total, Kai Kelly walked away with $38,000 of the 405's money, humiliating the king in his own kingdom. It was a rivalry that burned hot and fast, and it proved that even the king could bleed. He was on top of the world, but the top is a dangerous place to be, and the fall is a long way down. The price of fame. Fame and speed come at a price, and in November 2015, the streets came to collect. While filming an episode of Street Outlaws, Big Chief lined up for what seemed like just another race. But this one would change everything. He was racing alongside Brian "Chucky" Davis. Reports say Davis's car got loose and tagged the back quarter panel of the Crow. In an instant, both cars were sent hurtling out of control. The Crow, his beloved 1972 Le Mans that he had built from the ground up, was destroyed in a violent tumbling wreck. The car was gone, a twisted mess of metal and memories. When the rescue crews pulled him from the wreckage, the extent of his injuries was terrifying. His own words later confirmed the damage: bruised lungs that left him on oxygen, a broken collarbone, and, most seriously, crushed L2 and L3 vertebrae in his back. He was lucky to be alive, and he knew it. From his hospital bed, he said, "This is the one that you never want to happen." He walked away, but a part of him was left in that wreckage. It was a sign that he was pushing too hard, flying too close to the sun. He lived to race another night, but the cost was higher than he could have ever imagined. The physical scars began to heal, but the emotional toll of his high-stakes life was just beginning to show. For years, the anchor in his chaotic world was his wife, Alicia. He met her when he was just 18 years old, working at a gas station. They dated for years before getting married in 2006 and had 2 sons together, Corbin and Koval. She was there before the fame, before the money, before the world knew his name. But the pressure of the show, the constant danger of the streets, and the man he was becoming under the bright lights of television, it was too much. The crash was a breaking point. The foundation of his life began to crack. In 2017, after more than a decade of marriage, it all fell apart. Big Chief and Alicia divorced, citing irreconcilable differences. Years later, when asked if he would do it all over again, he got choked up, saying he would have his best friend back, his family back. The king of the streets had lost his queen, and his kingdom was starting to crumble. With his car gone and his family broken, the pressure seemed to change him. The brotherhood of the 405 began to fracture. His lifelong friendship with Murder Nova dissolved. Sean left Midwest Streetcars, the business they had built together, with some saying the long drive to the shop kept him from his family. Others whispered that the real reason was that he and Chief just could not stand each other anymore. All of the people he grew up with seemed to hate him now. On the show, he was not just the keeper of the rules anymore. Some felt he thought he was the rules. He began to clash with the very people who created the show. He disagreed with new policies, like the Race Your Way and rule, which he felt was unfair to the original racers. He felt the show was becoming a super quick money grab and was losing its soul. He was the face of the franchise, but behind the scenes, a war was brewing. He argued with producers who he felt were dictating rules that went against the spirit of true street racing. The other racers, the men he called his brothers, grew distant. Some say they turned their backs on him, leaving him to fight his battles alone. Others whisper that he was the one who pushed them away, that his ego had grown too big for the streets that made him. In 2022, after years of building an empire, Big Chief walked away from it all. He was alone, cut off from the show, the fame, and the family that had once defined him. Cut off from the show, and with his personal life in shambles, Justin Shearer had to find a new way, a new source of income, and it seems he turned his famous brand into a criminal enterprise. Suddenly, the name Big Chief was not just on the side of a race car. It was on the front of an illegal smoke shop in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. This was not just some small-time operation. New York's Attorney General called it one of the worst bad actors in the city, the center of a multi-million-dollar unlicensed cannabis operation that brazenly broke the law for over a year. Investigators raided the Big Chief smoke shop multiple times, seizing over 600 pounds of illegal, untested cannabis products. The shop was eventually shut down, and the owner was hit with a massive $6 million judgment. Was it just a coincidence that this massive illegal business used the exact name of the most famous street racer in the world? Or was the king of the 405 trying to become the kingpin of something far more dangerous? The questions did not stop there. Around the same time, a legal dispute erupted over counterfeit, Big Chief-branded cannabis products being sold online, illegally using the trademark name and logos. The brand he had built was now tied to a web of illegal sales and deceit. Why would he risk it all? A possible motive can be found in public records. A document reveals a federal tax lien filed against Justin Shearer. Was he in deep financial trouble? Was this illegal empire, built using his name, a desperate attempt to pay off a massive debt to the government? When you look closer at his past, the signs of a man who played fast and loose with the law were there all along. It was not just about racing. There was a speeding ticket in Missouri, another one in Flagstaff, Arizona. But there was something far more serious dating all the way back to 1998 in Oklahoma, a case for leaving the scene of an accident. Some would call it a hit and run. It was a pattern of behavior that started long before the cameras ever started rolling. A disregard for the rules that would eventually lead to his final downfall. The final verdict, goodbye forever. A federal tax lien, a hit and run, a multi-million-dollar illegal business empire bearing his name. It all leads back to this. Back to a courtroom in Kentucky, the very state where he was born. The story had come full circle. The final charges filed against him were not about street racing. They were the logical end to the dark path he had chosen. Receiving stolen property, perhaps to build his cars off the books, away from the prying eyes of the IRS. Possession of methamphetamine, a tragic glimpse into a dark side of the outlaw world we never saw on TV. And possessing a firearm as a felon, the final tool of a man who had gone too far, a man who had nothing left to lose. The timeline of his fall is a roadmap of tragedy. It began with a hit-and-run charge in 1998, a red flag that was ignored for years. Then came the financial pressure of a federal tax lien. The devastating crash in 2015 sent his life and career spinning out of control, followed by the collapse of his marriage in 2017. Between 2017 and 2020, while the world watched him race, a secret criminal life was escalating, leading to charges of theft, drug possession, and illegal firearm possession. In 2022, he turned his back on the spotlight and left Street Outlaws, fully embracing the shadows. That same year, the final gavel fell, and he was sentenced to prison with a maximum release date of 2032. The man who once ruled the list is now just a number in the system. His official PID number is 350095. The roar of his engine has been replaced by the final deafening clang of a cell door. For the millions of fans, for the racing world he helped build, and for the man once known as Big Chief, it is a tragic and shocking end to an outlaw story. It is goodbye forever.